Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me? No? How do I turn the volume up on this thing? Can you all hear me now? Okay. We're working on turning the volume up here. I'm just going to go ahead and kick us off here. Thank you all for coming this morning. I'm glad the weather held out for us. And so thank you for being here today as we dive into the fascinating story of Woogie Harris. And not to give too much away before our speakers come up, he was a businessman in 1930s, 40s Pittsburgh. He was a self-made millionaire, a Duesenberg owner. I like to say he's a fan of fast cars and excellent music. First, we're going to hear from our curator, Sam Great, here at the museum, who's going to tell us about Woogie's Duesenberg and how it exists today. I'd like to give a special shout out to the Stall's Motor and Music Experience Museum for bringing up this amazing car and piece of history. So when we're done the presentations today, I encourage you to get up close and check it out. And if you have time to visit their museum in Chesterfield, Michigan, I encourage you to do that as well. We're also honored to have two guest speakers who have traveled here to be with us today. We will hear from Dawn Carroll, a producer and a designer from Boston who first reached out to the museum about a year ago in her quest to find Woogie's Duesenberg and share his story with us. And then we'll also be hearing from Jeanette Solomon, the executive director of the National Opera House in Pittsburgh, who will share with us her ongoing efforts to preserve Mystery Manor and share the story of Woogie Harris. So today's event is more than just a look at history. It's an opportunity for us to reflect on the impact of those who came before us and to celebrate the ongoing efforts to preserve their remarkable stories. After the presentations, we'll have time for questions, and thank you again for joining us today.
All right, well, thank you, Madison, for that introduction here. I've got my cheat sheet here, not to tell me what to say, but just to keep me on track so I don't say too much. So I like to start off just so everyone is aware, when the Duesenberg Model J's were built, they were built from 1929 through 1937. So when you first purchased a Duesenberg brand new from the factory, you bought the rolling chassis. So you bought the engine, the frame, the tires, the firewall, essentially everything but the body that went on the car. Once you purchased that Duesenberg for $8,500, mind you, back in 1929, which was already a significant amount of money, you then decided what body style you wanted on and what coach builder you wanted to have that body style from. So after everything with the coach being built and put on the car, any other options that you had at the same time, you typically ended with a cost of about $14,000 to $20,000, depending on all those additional options that you could have. And this was post-Depression era too, so it was by far the most expensive production car you could buy in America at that time. So the Duesenberg that William Woogie Harris purchased in March of 1933 was a Murphy-bodied convertible sedan. On the far left side of the slide here, you can see him and his son sitting on the hood and the spare tire of that particular Duesenberg. It was built by Murphy Coach Builders out of Pasadena, California. William Harris bought it in March of 1933, and he owned it for approximately 3 years, till about roughly 1936 or so. The next recorded thing that we have with the car is that it was sold in 1938 to a gentleman named Jack H. Miller, who interestingly timed it at 126 miles per hour. I don't know if he was going downhill or something, or he had a good wind behind him, but he was moving very fast. And we're not 100% sure, but it might have been under his ownership in about 1940 that same Duesenberg was involved in an accident, supposedly wrecking into a streetcar. From there, because of that accident, the body had to be scrapped, and the only thing that was able to be saved from that was the engine, stamped J209. The next confirmed thing we know happening to it was that J209 was purchased by a gentleman named, what was it? A gentleman named Clemens, who purchased the engine and put it in his Packard Roadster. He took out his Packard engine and put the Duesenberg engine into his Packard Roadster as a replacement for a Duesenberg engine he already had in that very same Packard Roadster. So as Madison had mentioned just a minute ago, Mr. Harris was a prominent businessman, philanthropist in the 1930s Pittsburgh, and he was the first owner of this particular Duesenberg engine J209 paired with chassis 2232. When we talk about Duesenbergs from a historical sense, we talk about both the engine and the chassis that it was paired with. The body style was a convertible sedan built by the Walter M. Murphy Company of Pasadena, California, and they were the most prominent coach builder for Duesenberg cars. They built the most of the Duesenberg bodies. After the accident with the Duesenberg and the engine was removed, it was purchased by a gentleman, Melvin Clemens, who he was known for buying, selling, and swapping Duesenberg parts. And like I said, he put it into his Packard Roadster. So then we enter another gentleman who owned a 1935 Auburn Speedster by the name of Joe Gertler Sr., who lived in the Bronx, New York. Sometime before 1956, he had kind of a similar idea from Mr. Clemens, in that he took out the supercharged Lycoming engine out of his Auburn Speedster and decided, I'm going to put in a much more powerful Duesenberg engine, that Duesenberg engine being stamped J434. To do this, as the Duesenberg engine was much larger than the Lycoming engine that came before it, the frame and the hood were lengthened almost 11 inches. This is the same Auburn Duesenberg Speedster we see here currently. The Speedster dashboard was replaced with a Duesenberg Model J dashboard and Duesenberg instrumentation. The rear of the body was modified proportionally with the extra 11 inches of length, so it kind of kept Gordon Bierig's proportions with his Auburn Speedster design. The headlights were integrated into the front fenders. A custom hood ornament was added, and a differentiating front grille design finished out the exterior features. In 1956, a gentleman named David F. Miller of Cleveland, Ohio, purchased that Speedster from Mr. Gertner, both of whom were Auburn Cord and Duesenberg automobile collectors. When Clemens and David Miller met, they met at the ACD reunion in 1956. They decided to swap the two Duesenbergs out between Miller's Auburn and Clemens' Packard Roadster, thus putting J209 in with the Auburn Speedster. In 2024, it was then purchased by Ted and Mary Stahl of Chesterfield, Michigan, who Madison mentioned with the Stahl's music and motors experience, who had the Speedster mechanically and aesthetically restored, cleaned up, and they actually had it at the ACD Festival this past year, which is where we discovered the Duesenberg engine with the Speedster. So it's kind of a little bit of a muddy story, as what happened with Duesenbergs throughout their time. Engines were swapped, bodies were swapped. You could basically take a body from one Duesenberg, swap it with another one, almost like a plug and play. So luckily, with the saving of J209 after that accident and the transfer of ownership, and then to Mr. Stahl's purchasing it, we've been able to find and pair the last known piece of Woogie Harris's Duesenberg and have it on display here with everyone else here and with our guest speakers today. So if you have any other questions about the car, about the Speedster, about the Stahl's Museum, feel free to speak with me, and then our friend Al Rogers here is the representative from the Stahl's Music and Motor Experience, and he can help answer questions too. So with that, I will step aside and we will welcome Don Carroll next.
Okay, the weather report said no ice and snow when I left Boston, which is getting 8 inches now. So thanks everybody for coming. It's amazing to be here. Janae Solomon, who bought the National Opera House 22 years ago, managed to get little crumbs in certain places so that people like me who are looking for good stories could find the stories. And when I did a charity in Boston for a 100-year-old theater, it was called the Cabot Theater in Beverly, we learned about antique theaters and what they were, why they were created and why they looked the way they did. The ornate gold, the white marble, the red velvets. And it was to pull people out of the pandemic, which was the Spanish flu. This was 60 days before COVID. So my partner in Over My Shoulder, which is the singer Patty Austin, and I decided to try to go save old theaters. And then we found this house. The house in its day was this beautiful, gorgeous home, huge granite steps, and now it's got trees growing through the walls, and the roof is coming down. And I read an interview by Janae that said that she was just trying to find some money to make sure that the roof didn't cave in. I'm a designer, and I thought it would be easy, I was so wrong, to help raise some money to save this roof of this house so it didn't fall down over the winter. So I thought I'd get clever, and I thought I would write a little bit of marketing music and ask my builders, architects, and designers to help me raise money to help Janae save this house. That little marketing music turned into something extraordinary. But prior to this project, it wasn't an easy thing for me to say that I believed in spirits and I believed in the energy of the past and how they could influence us today. But we're all here right now to learn about Woogie, and you're going to learn more about an amazing story. And I totally believe that the power of Mary Cardwell Dawson, Woogie Harris, and this house are all in this room today. I swear Mary Cardwell Dawson jumped into Janae Solomon's body and has just been clinging onto this house for 22 years? 22 years. When I was in my 20s, I wasn't buying houses, I was buying clothes and things. So it's a miracle that Janae has saved this architectural gem. So the one song, which was called If the Walls Could Talk, started about a poem. And I very much was looking for a hero, back in 2019. I was looking for something to inspire me to do something. And Mary Cardwell Dawson kept popping in my head. I was struggling with career changes and things like that. And I was reading more and more about Mary, who, born in the late 1800s, got herself to Boston, to the New England Conservatory, knew she may not be an opera singer, but did the next best thing. She came out of there with 2 degrees. She came out with a music degree, a piano degree, and a vocal degree. So I was starting to feel a little empowered by that. I'm like, all right, if she could do it, I could do it. Then she managed to get herself to Pittsburgh. She managed to start a music school, and that music school became a mentoring incubator for hundreds and hundreds of kids and students. And then she said, all right, I'm not going to be an opera singer, but I'm going to start my own opera company. And she created a world-class opera company. So now I'm like, all right, if Mary can do it, I can do it. So, we each look for stories to do different things for ourselves. And as I dug into the history of this house, I learned about Woogie, and I'd never heard of Woogie before. And, here's this man, first black millionaire of Pittsburgh. He bought this house, and he swung his doors wide open at sunset and welcomed celebrities to come in because there wasn't many other places for them to stay in 1940 after they had performed at all these great places for audiences. This home welcomed them, and they stayed there, and lavish, gorgeous parties happened there. So again, I have this little mentoring foundation with the jazz singer Patty Austin, and I called her and I'm like, your family was in Pittsburgh in the 40s. I said, your dad was a really famous, well-known session player. He hung out at this house. Do you know about the house? And she said no. So then I asked her if she knew about Mary. She said no. So now I'm really, really excited. I mean, I'm obsessed at this point. So I wrote a little poem, and it was a poem because I was really upset at the condition of the house, really upset at the lost history of Mary Cardwell Dawson. The women's history part of it, the black history part of it, the music history part of it. There was something grand about this story. So the little poem was just a spoken word, and it was something like this. I'll probably botch it up, but it was, "Come back, Mary, your dreams will proudly carry. You will no longer hurt. We're going to pull your story out of this dirt." And that little poem got sent to a hip-hop artist in Houston who I was working with. And we were all under the spell of Amanda Gorman, and I said, "Michael, can you do something with this little poem I've got? I need a little marketing music." And he wrote something from the perspective of a 30-year-old man in Houston who was feeling also very hopeless. And it was so inspiring that we flew him to Boston and we went into a full studio and we recorded this song. And the song was called "If the Walls Could Talk." And it was about preserving the history, saving the house. I can't explain what happened after that, but 15 songs later, there's a Woogie Harris song, which will play you a little part of it if you want to hear it. There's a Roberto Clemente song. There is a story about just the condition of the home, the heartache of it. And then about 6 songs into it, I knew this was a musical. I had never written a musical before. I had never written a play before. I can hardly string together an articulate sentence, but I knew this was going to be a play and a musical. And the musical was about Janae Solomon and her struggle to save this house. And, Michael Berry, my little hip-hop guy, trying to help her save the house and writing an album about saving the house. And 5, 6 years later, I still haven't been to the house, but don't tell anyone. I'm going this year. We just did the first public reading of the play last Sunday night, and I didn't know what to expect. I've never been to a reading of a play before. I mean, this is all new, really new territory for me. But it got a standing ovation, and everyone asked me, "Well, what was that?" And I'm like, "Geez, I don't know." I'm like, "They liked it." I was really, kind of surprised. And I went home that night and I thought about it. And the house, and the reason this house needs to be saved, and all of these little architectural gems, is that they're time capsules. And people did what we're trying to do now before, and they helped get us to where we are now. And then we forget about them. We don't give them credit. We let them kind of evaporate. And so again, none of this would happen if it wasn't for Janae and Janae's daughter, who's sitting behind her, and hanging on to this thing for 22 years. And we got to save this house. We got to save all these stories. So with that, we thought we would play a little bit of Woogie's song, which was called "Big Old Daddy," and the line in the song is "Boogie Old Daddy's back in town," and I thought that was totally appropriate because the car's here. We've been searching for this car for a long, long time. But I reached out to this museum. I said, "I'm looking for J209. Who has it?" And they said, "Well, it's in a private collection." And that was sort of it. And then I went to California and I went through people and I Googled that Jay Leno might know a few things about Duesenbergs. So I reached out in a roundabout way to find him. I'm like, "You have this J209? And it got back to me, he did not. And then I learned about Randy, what's Randy's last name? Randy Ema. And I left him like a gazillion messages on his machine saying, "I'm looking for J209. Someone's got to help me do this thing here." And a year later, J209. So it's pretty cool. So we're going to play you a little bit of the song. Hopefully you like it. It'll put us back into the time period of 1940. And it goes like this. Hit it.
Maybe. Oh, hold on. Technical difficulty.
This was unplanned. Bear with us. This was my last minute idea.
Big old daddy's coming back to town. Your big old daddy's coming back to town. So spread the news, don't hesitate. We'll shake this town till it percolates. Big old daddy's coming back to town. Yeah, that's right, all right. Daddy's coming home tonight, all right. Daddy's back in town.
So hopefully that gets you in the mood of Woogie. Thank you. So who was Woogie? There's no dialogue of any of these people, really. I mean, there's dialogue of Roberto Clemente, there's some dialogue, but Woogie and Mary's voices are kind of quiet. So I had to use a lot of imagination on what Woogie sounded like. And in the play, in real life, Michael Berry was a victim of domestic abuse. He was shot and he was in a coma. And that's how I get Michael Berry in 2025 back in 1940. It's very Wizard of Ozzy, but he's up there now, and he's, Woogie's like, who's this kid in my house? And Mary wants to know who they are, and Michael's trying to explain to them that they're long gone, and that the house is falling down, and that he and Janae Solomon are going to help save this house. And so there's a lot to process for Woogie, and he, of course, is, I'm imagining, hysterical. So when he realizes that thieves have stolen all the beautiful things in the house, his heart breaks. When he realizes the house is falling down, he's just horrified. And then he asks the question, where's my Duesenberg? Now, I had never heard of a Duesenberg before this project, so I made the same thing. We tried to stay very true. Michael said, what is that? So we're going to do something really special, and I need help from 2 more people in the audience here. So I printed the parts of the script where Michael's trying to tell Woogie, who's losing his mind, that the house is falling down and somebody's stolen or taken his car. So we have a Woogie Harris already. I need a Mary Cardwell Dawson. Who would like to read the part of Mary Cardwell? It's right here. Please come do it. Come on, we need a Mary. It's fun. It's only a few things, so no, there's no pressure. Come on, get up here, Mary. All right, and then I need someone to play Michael. And Michael is 30-year-old rapper, hip-hop artist guy, and he is like terrified of Woogie because Woogie's really upset that all this is happening, and he's trying to explain, and he's using his phone trying to explain it. So who will play Michael? Come on, we need a Michael. Come on, you can do it. Don't make me read Michael. You know how intimidating it was for me to, in my shower, record myself rapping the lyrics to Michael? I can't do it again. All right, you're going to play Mary. Okay. Highlighted all the Marys. Okay. And you're going to play Michael?
I'll be Michael.
Yay! All right, you want the highlighted Woogie, or you good with what you like? All right, so here it is. I'll do the narration part of it, because I just learned how to do this last weekend. So, in Act 2, in the musical, Woogie Harris is trying to understand Michael and what has happened to his Mystery Manor, which is the name of the house. Michael has been shot and is in a coma. And in a coma dream, it's how he manages to get to the 2nd floor. So in the 2nd floor, Woogie Harris is like, who's this kid, this stranger who looks a lot different than 1940s, and why is he in my house? Michael's trying to explain to him, and Mary has now come into the scene, that they are dead. Hard part to write. But when you're gone, what do you know? So I had to take a lot of imagination there as well. But he is saying that they are dead, forgotten, and the house is one gust of wind from falling over. So at this point, Michael holds up his phone to try to explain. So who's reading Michael? Go.
See, this is what I'm doing here. It's the year 2025. I've been coming to this house we're standing in, just looking at it. At first, I didn't know why, but then it and you, Miss Mary, started talking to me. Ain't that crazy?
It sounds crazy.
Yep, it do sound crazy.
How can it be the house that we're standing in started talking to you?
Because the house ain't like it is right now this second. It's falling down, falling apart. But I'd look at this house in the night, and it raised up something inside me. The wind's churning up voices from the dusts of yesterday. Then I met Miss Solomon.
Who's Miss Solomon?
She's the lady who owns the house right now.
My house, she owns my house, and it's fallen down.
Miss Solomon's trying to save it, I guess, and now we're trying to save it.
How's this Miss Solomon own my house?
Well, I don't know how it happened, but it's hers now, and she means to save it. But not just save it from falling down, but saving your history. Miss Mary's legacy, and yours, Mr. Woogie, and Mr. Joe Lewis, and Mr. Roberto Clemente, everybody's legacy for being wiped away, saving it from just clean forgotten. I wrote a whole album all about you and your friends, and it starts with this poem. Come back, Mary, come back, Mary. Your dreams I will proudly carry. Pull your life from the soil and dirt. You will no longer hurt if the walls could talk.
What kind of music is that?
They took my house and turned it into a ghetto? I don't believe it. No, sir.
This is what it looks like now.
Narrator, sorry. So Michael flips open photos of the house on his phone. Woogie and Mary look at the devastation of the home. Woogie stands frozen as Michael flips through more and more and more photos.
This is what it looks like now.
Woogie and Mary look at, sorry, I'm terrible at this. Sorry, guys. Woogie and Mary look at the devastation of the home.
My Lord.
Woogie stands frozen as Michael flips through more images of the decaying home.
My Tiffany stained glass. My Waterford crystal chandelier. My carved oak staircase. What happened to my house?
That's what I'm saying. Me and Miss Solomon are trying to save this house.
Who is Miss Solomon again?
She's the one who owns the house now.
She owns my house.
There's a plaque inside. That's how Mrs. Solomon first came to this house.
National Negro Opera Company, here at the Cardwell School of Music. This first national black opera company was founded in 1941 by Mary Cardwell Dawson, noted for its musical genius. It performed for 21 years in Pittsburgh, Washington, New York, and other cities. Well, I'll be.
Mary got a plaque? I ain't got a plaque.
Now, Mr. Harris, don't go get your dander up.
My house, my magnificent manor, is nothing more than a dilapidated, fallen down eyesore. Who let this happen?
I don't know, but it's up to me and Miss Solomon to bring it back.
I understand that this Miss Solomon owns the house now, but what was it got to do with you?
Miss Mary, I heard you talking, singing.
What's that mean? You heard me talking and singing.
Just that I would come by that house. I didn't see the plaque at first. It was something about how that house stood in its place, how it looked at night, just the outline of it. I'd stop and stare. I didn't know why. I was hypnotized. But then I started hearing voices, your voice. And then I started hearing music. And then I saw the plaque, and I needed to know everything about you, this house, Mr. Woogie, and everyone who was here back in the day.
What happened to my Duesenberg?
I don't know what that is.
My car. Hey, get on that thing and find my car.
What was it, a Dusseldorf?
Duesenberg. Duesenberg. The Grand Prix winning, the most luxurious, best automobile ever known to mankind. It's American made in Indiana. It is so sophisticated. You dig that? Gary Cooper, Clark Gable, and Mr. Woogie Harris all owned and drove Duesenbergs. That's what it is.
Speaking of that thing, what is that thing again?
Oh, this is just my phone.
That's a telephone?
I don't care what it is. I want to know what happened to my car.
Says here you bought the car in Chicago. J209 was the serial number, and okay, here, somebody bought the engine. Maybe Jay Leno, but the car itself is gone.
Okay, get Jay Leno on the phone.
Mr. Woogie, you just can't call up Jay Leno just like that.
Lordy, Mr. Harris, it's just a car. Let the boy be.
It's only just a car because you never had one.
of how we all got here today. With that, Janae Solomon's really the hero of the story. If she had not bought this house, tried to save this house, continued to try to save this house, we wouldn't know anything about this. To the museum, a year ago I wrote to them, asking them about J209, and they found it. Thank you to the stalls. Thank you everybody for coming and learning about the story. And with that, let's meet our real hero, Janae.
Does it take me? There we go.
There it goes.
While this is loading up, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am so thrilled to be here today, and thank you all for coming. As mentioned, my name is Janae Solomon, and as it mentioned in the play, I am the owner of the house, which is called the Opera House. And let me just say, this journey to get here, for me, started in 2000. 25 years ago, I was driving by the house, which is 7101 Apple Street, and thought to myself, you know what? I'm looking for a community service project. The house was abandoned, and I said, I will purchase this house, restore it, and restore all of the stories that happened in the house. I did a solid 3-year plan to get the stories out and to restore the house. And not knowing that my 3 years would be a lifetime, we're here today. We're here to celebrate William Woogie Harris. He was not just a business person, but he was the first Black racketeer millionaire in America, and he was the first African-American owner of a Duesenberg, which he purchased in cash. Personally, I've never purchased a custom-made car in cash. Well, I've never purchased a custom-made car. Let's just end it right there. So it was so impressive to me that Woogie Harris was able to amass such wealth and change the entire world, but no one knew who he was. The same thing with Mary Cardwell Dawson, who started the National Negro Opera Company. She was an opera singer and was completely erased from history. When we purchased the house, the goal was to save the actual house. It was abandoned. I was driving by and I saw the plaque and decided to come out of my car and give myself a tour. When I reached the 3rd floor of the house, I realized it was the most picturesque view of the city of Pittsburgh from the 3rd floor. The entire property is 82,000 square feet, which includes an amphitheater. So why I thought I can restore all of this in 3 years was just bonkers to me. In the research, we found that Woogie Harris not only owned the J209, but he owned custom Cadillacs as well. And he also purchased a Cadillac for his brother, Teenie Harris. The Opera House was just one of his homes. This is a picture of his other house, where he actually lived with his other car that was parked at the house. And Woogie Harris in Pittsburgh was called the bank. He was the bank for over 90% of Black businesses in the city of Pittsburgh. Again, he's completely forgotten. This is actually the beginning of us telling his story. Until now, I've spent the last 25 years fundraising to restore the house and tell the story of Mary Cardwell Dawson. Mary Cardwell Dawson was just awarded with a Music Hall of Fame, Lifetime Music Hall of Fame.
and recognized as a pioneer in opera. So we feel as though we have brought her completely out of erasure and into the world, and we will do the same with Woogie Harris and the J209. The entire world will understand how important he was, not only to the business world, but also his love of automobiles. He felt that owning a car gave you freedom. It gave you the ability to get into that car and go anywhere that you wanted to go, and dare anyone to tell you not to go there. Now, we're not all driving around in a custom-built car. I heard he had the seats fitted to his exact behind size, which I think is a great way to travel. And he also had, as was mentioned, everything custom-made to his specifications. And he allowed other people to be able to purchase a car, to travel around Pittsburgh and the world. In Pittsburgh, we wrote a book called Destination Opera House. And it was about people, the Great Migration, how people would get into their cars and leave Pittsburgh and discover America, or come to Pittsburgh and discover the city. Now, who was Woogie Harris other than a great car owner? He was a businessman, but he was a numbers runner. There's a lot of stories that said he was a gangster. He was not a gangster. He was just a business owner that wanted the world to be a better place, and he was very, very good at doing that. So this is one of his cars, and he also, this is the house here. So this is the actual opera house with another one of his cars in front of the house. And this picture was taken in the 1940s. And at the house, he built the first golf course in the city of Pittsburgh. It was a 9-hole golf course. He also built a shrine at the house where people can come and pray. But what happened is when people came to the house, they fell in love with his cars. It was the talk of the town. This house that you see in the picture is the one we're trying to save in the stories. It was listed on the 11 most endangered structures in America. And of the 11 most endangered, Forbes magazine named us the most endangered. Last year, AARP named the house the #1 place to visit before it's gone. So our goal is to make sure it's restored. Now that we found the J209 and we have told Mary's story and we're going to tell Woogie's story, we want to let people know that history happens everywhere. And history happens with all of us. We're telling a story of a family, the Harris family, that was completely lost. We're telling a story of the Dawson family that was completely lost. All of you have a story. And just when you think my story is not that important, I encourage you to see if you have a J209 in your basement or your uncle's basement or your uncle's basement. Because before you throw that art away that's just sitting on grandma's wall, it might be a Picasso. So we do not know our history enough. We don't know the genealogy of it to really value our assets. I was born in Georgetown, Guyana, and I came to America with my parents because my dad had a dream to build a steel pan in the Steel City. When we arrived in the Steel City, there was no steel. And my mom said, okay, well, we don't know anyone here, we're gonna stay. And that is when we started learning all of the great history of Pittsburgh, which brought us here to the museum. And what I'll end with is really a story of inspiration and motivation. We may not want to own a custom car, or we may not want to own a luxury home, or whatever your goals are. But what Woogie taught me in researching is set your goals, set your dreams, and it is achievable. And he achieved this in a time where the average person was not buying, a $15,000 or $20,000 car for cash. And he was able to achieve that. I will show you a picture of Woogie Harris so you know what he looks like. This is actually him here. This is the obituary for him. And Don mentioned that I was, digging for all of these things. And I would not be here without Don Carroll. And I wouldn't be here for all of the people who really volunteer their time to help tell this story. I only found the house and started digging in people's basements, as one person. But there's many people that joined me to tell this story for us to land here today. And his obituary was one of the things that we found. We found over 53,000 articles, which you can now find at the Library of Congress. I did not keep it in my own possession. This is the baseball team that Woogie funded, and this is them at the house. This is a picture of the baseball team at the house. He funded 2 different baseball teams. He owns 4 clubs and 3 private clubs. One of his private clubs, I could not find any information because if you talked, he killed you. He threatened to. So I found no information about the club, but I do know that club was open from midnight to 5 a.m. So who has been to a club from midnight to 5 a.m.? Oh, okay. Maybe we can do a pop-up of one of those clubs. But I heard people had a good time, and it was for people who did not want to go home after they left the club. So from midnight to 5 a.m., you can go to his private club and party. I heard. This is another picture of one of his cars. Can you see that? Oh. So this is another picture that we found of one of his cars. I do not know what kind of car this is, but I do know it's another car he did purchase for cash. And what I do know about this car is he would keep it at his girlfriend's house. No other comment about that. And then this is Woogie at one of the parties at the house. Who recognizes anyone in the picture? As you can see, parties at the house, people came dressed in suits. I've had parties at my house, and believe me, no one came dressed like this, but these are the type of parties that they had at Woogie threw at the house. So it was absolutely incredible, and we found about 20,000 pictures from the T.D. Harris collections of parties, just parties, not anything else, parties. So obviously he was having a really good time, and this is Woogie with Lena Horne at another party. Oh, let's see if we can get that in there. Let me see if I can open that up. Yeah. So that's Woogie with Lena Horne. Woogie with his wife, Ada. And I do have one with Lena Horne to show you. Let's see where it is. Oh, here it is. So this is Woogie here with Lena Horne at another party. So as I said, we found tens of thousands of pictures with Woogie at several parties at the house, and it was extremely exciting to just get a view inside someone else's life and how they lived. Thank you again for having us here today. It was very exciting to meet the car in person and to really see what this looks like. It's incredible. When I first found out that Woogie owned a Duesenberg, I didn't know what a Duesenberg was because I'm a car lover myself, and I have a list of cars that I've wanted to sit in and drive. And Duesenberg, Bugatti, Porsche, they're all on the list. And it was incredible to me that he was able to purchase the J209 and drive it down the streets of Pittsburgh. I asked, what did that sound like? What does that sound like when you're driving a car with that type of engine down a city street? And I was told it sounds like a muscle car going down the street. So I would be excited to just feel that experience. And I'm sure Woogie inspired a lot of people driving his J209 in Pittsburgh. Thank you again for having us here today. Are there any questions?
Can you show a picture of the house today?
So yes, a picture of the house today, pretty much, I have a picture of, this is it when it was built in 1917, and then this is the house pretty much today. And so the house was built by a German family, and I'll show you the original picture. After they built the house, they took a picture in front of the house. And so, as I mentioned, when I bought the house, it was completely abandoned. So the history of the house, the history of Woogie Harris, the history of J209, it was all really lost until now we're gonna tell the story. And I'm sure everyone's gonna be very, very excited to hear that this existed.
When was the house last occupied?
The house was last occupied officially in 1976. So 1976, it was owned by the niece of the Harris family until 1989. They lost it to the bank, but it was officially occupied last in 1976.
Tends to be a contemporary of Cab Calloway, so consequently I would imagine that he would have run across him at some point in time.
Oh yeah, I have pictures with Cab Calloway at the house, just chilling. And I have pictures of Joe Louis and Roberto Clemente at parties at the house, just chilling in the room. In the play that you read, it mentioned Tiffany glass. The house on the side where the roof fell had curved Tiffany glass windows. When I bought it, the windows were there. One of the contractors I hired went and stole the windows. They just cut it out, and that's why the entire porch fell. So just a little bit about the project. In the 25 years when I bought the house, the crystal chandelier was stolen from the house while I owned it. The staircase in the house, someone that came to help me to restore it, took the entire staircase out of the house and stole it. The porch in front fell because someone stole all of the pillars that held the porch up. Someone else went into the house and stole every door and every doorknob. So it's been interesting, but if you see some curved Tiffany glass windows somewhere, they belong to the Opera House, okay? Just so we're clear, they were custom made. They're custom made windows, and they were literally, I went to the house one day and just saw a hole. Like literally, it was just open. So, and the crystal chandelier again was stolen. It's sitting in someone's house right now. And the same with the staircase. So people literally stole the house bit by bit, and that's really what caused it to deteriorate so quickly. But the pillars were also stolen. Yes.
We go there today, is that what we can see, or is there anything around there?
Yeah, if you go there today, like actually today, it has been stabilized. So I can give you a tour of the house today. I've removed all of the walls, and we've built steps, we've rebuilt steps, so you don't have to hoist yourself through the second story window anymore. And no one has to sign a waiver of death when you go. So all of that's gone, and I can give a tour of the house. Harry Smith did an amazing interview at the house. It's online. You can see it on NBC now. And he was impressed that we were able to restore the house so close to its original build. So we are getting there, but this is a $10 million project. And it wouldn't be important if we didn't tell the story of the people that made it important, like Woogie Harris. So people understand what a huge significance they had in the world, not just with the items that they bought, but how they gave access to different opportunities. Any other questions? I will show you the original house built by the German family. This is it here. So this is the family that built the house. This is what it looked like the day it was finished. And I'm actually in touch with the family that built it. And it was built by Germans, and it was built in 1894. So we actually want to preserve the house to the day Woogie bought the house and not this day, because this would triple my budget. This would triple my budget, and just restoring the steeple that you see, which is gorgeous. And that's where the opera company was. And they sang opera into the steeple, and it sounds amazing. We had an opera singer sing there last year, and everyone cried because the sound was so angelic. So we're restoring it to the day Woogie purchased the house and not the day it was built, just for cost savings. But everything that you see there, the wraparound porch, everything was hand built. And that's why it's still standing. Everything in the house, the wood, it's actually 2x4s. Contractors were shocked that 2x4s used to be 2x4 in measurement. So it's amazing that we were able to save so much of the house.
Why did they sell the house? You know the story behind that?
Why did this family sell the house? Well, they moved to a bigger house that's in Pittsburgh called Millionaire Row, where Frick lived, and the Carnegies, and the Hillmans. So these people were all in Pittsburgh. So they left Apple Street to go to Millionaires Row. Yes, yes. So it was a very wealthy time. But I think being here at the museum and telling this story to all of you is also a historical moment. We're getting to see a car, we're making history right now. You're getting to see something fully restored that people, it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of love and a lot of care and a lot of time and research to restore something to this type of glory. And that's our goal with the house. Not just to restore the stories, but to restore the actual structure. And one day we'll have a new picture with the house, the car sitting in front of the house as it is today. It might be 2085, but we know that it will definitely happen. So thank you all for having me here today. It was an absolute pleasure, and I'm just really, really overjoyed that we were able to find the J209 in this beautifully restored car and tell the story of Woogie Harris.
Does anybody have any questions for Dawn or Sam about the car or anything else before we wrap up today?
Now, so if we come to visit and take a little road trip, do we contact you first? Is that?
Thank you for asking that, because other people try to give themselves a tour. But yes, you would contact me, and then I would be happy to give you a tour of the house. But since Google Maps put us on the map, on the Google map, and it pops up as a place to see, there's a lot of people that just drive by and take pictures at the house.
Anybody else have any questions?
What type of support do you need that the general public can help you in your efforts to complete the research and restoration for your project?
Thank you for your question. The support that we need right now is definitely financial support to keep the project going. Stabilization only lasts for about a year. So we have a temporary roof, we have temporary steps, but it's easy for this house to slide right back on the 11 most endangered list. The second support we need is to tell the story. I've been telling this story for 25 years, more than my daughter has been alive. She's 16. She was like, "You've been telling the story my whole life." And yet people don't know it. They've not heard of a J209. When I used to talk about the Duesenberg, Woogie Harris, and how incredible it was for someone to purchase a car like this, people would ask the same thing that was asked in the play. What's a Duesenberg? And why is this important? So telling the story is very important. And the third piece I will say is something I mentioned, which is really learning your family history and learning how important it is. And learning your own history and how important you are. A lot of people, you live life and you think, oh, I'm just Janae Solomon, you know, but what you're doing is important, and one day you're part of someone's story. And today, Woogie Harris is part of the story of the Duesenberg and the J209.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Could Sam identify those two cars, the picture behind you, this car, there was looked like a Packard or something, I don't know.
Sam, did you catch what cars those were?
It looked like the one that was in front of the house that looked to me like it was probably a Cadillac. And then the one that was parked on the side of the road looked to me like a LaSalle.
And I have not found those cars, if you're wondering. I have not found those cars. Maybe I'll find another great volunteer like Dawn to hunt it down, but I have not found those two cars at all.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Grace Story. My name is John Joy. I'm from Pennsylvania. Like newspaper, all the CBS stores. Love to interview you after this. Get your story and see how we can help you. And my granddaughter, who's a graduate also. Love to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm happy to talk to you all after the talk. Thank you.
Any last questions? I will also say Songs for Mary and the National Opera House all have Facebook pages and websites. So if you want to keep up with their stories too, you can do that online. And then if nobody else has any questions, I encourage you to get close and check out the car and ask.
Where do we buy the music at? Where do we purchase that at?
The music, if you go to the back table back there, there are some QR codes and pamphlets with information about the music and the house.
Thank you.
All right, get up and check out that car. I encourage you
excited. Step back.
This is all on your cannon.